Good afternoon, everyone out there in YouTube land. My name is Jared, and this is my channel, Mazda P3K. In this video, we're going to fix the steering rack on my KT196 go-kart, which is on the ground behind me here. Son found a post, damaged the rack. We need to replace it. Without further ado, let's get started. Okay, here it is, Coleman KT196 go-kart. You can find them at Tractor Supply or equivalent in your area. Pretty common. You can find parts for them, which is good. So as I said, my son found a post and he was fine, but he destroyed the steering bushing and decided not to try to fix it. I thought I could just replace the bushing, but no. You have to replace the entire rack. So on that note, I did purchase a new steering rack. Right here, comes with everything you need. That's for where the steering wheel shaft comes in. I mean, we'll have to adjust the tie rods a little bit, get them all dialed in, but I believe this will work. And for reference, the part number, got a whole bunch of part numbers here, so it's an HS210810-SP, or it could be a P400001641000000. I'm not sure. Manufacturer is Hisun. This is Chinese. Again, this rack's out there. It wasn't cheap, but it is available. All right, so just gonna kind of take this thing off left to right, get things loose. We need to take loose our tie rod end here, and I think that's going to be a 10 millimeter. Let's see. No, so that's probably a 12. Check this. Is this a 10? That's probably an 8. That's a 10. Okay. So I think we're going to need 8 millimeter, 10 millimeter, and 12 millimeter for our stuff along the way. Let me go get a couple of wrenches and a couple more sockets and we should be good to go. All right, let's see what we get. It is a 12. All right, we need more firepower. Let's see what this does. Yep, there we go. Okay, so as you can see, I thought we might have to take a mallet to that, but nah, it came right out. Now we do want to preserve our threading here because I'm going to adjust the new steering to this threading so that things are more or less right, because this was more or less right until my son crashed into one of the railroad ties that makes up my fence, and then it didn't work so well anymore. That's what you get when you take your eyes off the road. You know what I mean? All right, let's move on down to one of these racks here. Okay, so that looks like it's a 8 millimeter head, a 10 millimeter nut. I'm gonna go use my tooling on the nut end. It's on the head end. Kind of swing this around in here. Sorry about that. Okay, so there goes that. And the new steering rack did not come with attachment hardware, so if you broke yours, you're going to have to go get some more. I believe it is available online, and if you didn't break it, hang on to it. Okay, so we got one more. Kind of bring you guys, give you a view. Yeah, there we go. That works. And we're gonna have to do a little extra work where the steering shaft comes in. Steering shaft. We'll get there in a second. Okay. So there's that. And let's take care of our ball joint. Oh, gotta push back to 12. There you go. All right, so at this point, the main thing that's going to be holding us in is going to be the steering shaft, and I got to stare at that and figure out how that works. Turns out what we needed was a standard 16 millimeter. 16 deep well was too long. Couldn't get a 16 wrench really in there, so that's what we needed. Was not on there very tight at all. I don't think it's counter threaded or anything silly like that. Let's see here. Yeah, it's not. It's about to come off. Come on. There we go. All right, get this booger off, and then we should be able to pull the steering shaft up and out of the way, and then that will allow us to fully remove the shaft or the steering rack. All right, one thing to note is I thought this was a undo one and then kind of peel it back kind of gig. It's not. There are 2 bolts, 8 millimeter heads, 10 millimeter nut, and you got to get them both out. I have my helper working from the other side. He's gonna take some responsibility for breaking this, so I got to get one more bolt out and then we're good. As you can see, the steering shaft is out. Hang on a second. Steering shaft is out. I just wiggled it really hard and pulled back. I didn't have to get a puller or anything. And then we should be able to get this out. All right, got everything out, and here we go.
What would you do if you made as much money as Mr. Beast made it?
All right, guys, so I've went ahead and I kind of roughed in the new steering rod or steering rack, and you'll see the wheels are not right. This one's kind of pointed in, that one's pointed in. I compared the amount of adjustment on this tie rod here to this tie rod here. Looks pretty good. But then when we come over here, you see there's 0 adjustment done here. And we've got, 3-4 threads worth over here. So this one's gonna need to be adjusted. This can only go one way because where the steering shaft inputs is off center. So if you drop stuff in and it's not lined up at all, that's what's going on. Just flip it over, put it in. So I'm gonna get this tie rod adjusted, which is pretty simple. You just spin this nut, I'll play with that to get that extended out. Just pop it out, and then should just be something like that. Yeah. We'll get that to roughly correct. Get that back in. Remember, this is small enough that you can just use your hand and move the wheel to get things in. It's not like when you're playing with big automotive stuff. So let me play with that, get these damn nuts locked up tight again, and then I'll get back with you. Okay, so I've got these jam nuts aren't tight yet. This indentation is so that you can put a wrench or something right here and then tighten your jam nut against the tie rod shaft. But I've got roughly the same amount of thread over here as I do over here. That's good to go. I've put the 12 millimeter nuts back on the bottom. So the next step is we need to put our steering gear on the bottom of our steering shaft. It is splined. So just kind of get it to where it's going to seat. And I don't think we need to put grease here because they already pre-greased inside of here. So then the next step is we need to actually take that back off. Slide the steering, you got to put the steering wheel and shaft back in, put this gear on, then install it in the housing. And the housing came pre-greased, which was quite nice. So we'll put all this in and we'll try to get the wheel installed 12 and 6 because I've got the tires straight-ish And I can adjust that out in the tie rod, but we want it the wheel straight.
All right.
So we've got it to slide this in, and that's interesting. It looks like this is bent. That's what it looks like to me. Yeah, it is bent. Somebody bent the steering wheel. That's interesting. So it looks like I needed to have this aligned differently. So even if the wheel wasn't bent, yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and redo this, flip it back over or something, because that's not gonna line up. That is not going to work. All right, so it turns out I had the steering wheel upside down, and once I put it right side up, I was able to get it to thread in. So at this point, if you try to turn the wheel, you see things are bouncing around. It's because you don't have the steering rack locked in yet. But the wheel's more or less up or down, and I'm putting the lock washer and the 16mm back on there. So we're gonna tighten this up. Once we're tight, we'll go ahead and we'll lock the steering rack back in, and the rest of our steering issues we're going to try to take care of using adjustment in the tie rods. Okay, so one thing to note, where the steering wheel comes in, flipping the steering wheel didn't fix the problem. What had happened was I had this mechanism upside down. So the little nuts that hold the collar, the bolts, are going to be facing up. They need to be facing up, and the big opening for your sprocket is actually going to be on the bottom. So this lock washer and nut actually tighten up directly against the sprocket that turns the teeth. When you go to put your sprocket in, what you may want to do is rotate this whole thing towards you. Make sure the teeth are lined up so the sprocket will actually drop in, and then rotate it back and then tighten it up. That's what I did. So the last thing we need to do is, I've got the wheels more or less right. I'm gonna take these jam nuts and lock them tight. And once that's done, I guess I'll let the kids go for a test drive and see what we get. So to tighten these up, you're looking at, you put a tool like an adjustable wrench or some locking pliers or something right there, and then that's probably like a 15 or a 16, and you just crank it as hard as you can, and that will prevent this tie rod from adjusting itself during operation. As I said, jam nuts, gotta take care of those. See, I got locking pliers here in this groove. Turns out these are a 14, and it's going to be opposite on each side. This side towards the passenger area, and then on the driver's side it is away from the passenger area to tighten it up. So with that, our repair is complete. We're going to clean up this super filthy seat real quick, and then we'll do our test drive. There you have it. Coleman KT196 go-kart back in action. Still need to clean up the seat a bit, but still, according to my son, the new steering rack works great, and he and his sister just had a whole bunch of fun on it. So I'm gonna call this a good repair. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video where we replaced the steering rack in a Coleman KT196 go-kart. If you found this video interesting, if you found it entertaining, if you learned something, please consider like, sharing, and subscribing. That does allow me to grow the channel, which allows me to bring more material and content like this. Please also leave a comment. I like to read them, I like to reply to them, and I very much like to learn from them. Also, guys, you may notice I make mistakes and I film them so that you guys don't make those mistakes. I'll see you guys next episode.